This program is powered by AIM Employers Association and Ogletree Deacons, a Feature Group USA production.
Hello, everybody. I'm Phil Brandt, President and CEO of AIM Employers Association. According to the Washington Post, full-time female workers made 81 cents for every dollar a man earned in 2024, down from 83 cents in 23 and 84 cents the year before. Today, we're looking into what's changing the way women work and earn and what that means for your compensation strategies. Strap in. I'm about to get fired up on This Week at Work.
Welcome to This Week at Work, the only show to pack workplace news, practical HR solutions, and timely insights into every 30-minute episode. From the latest rulings in the courtroom to the strategies unfolding in the boardroom, and from real conversations taking place on the front lines to spotlighting what similar companies are doing about the challenges they face. This Week at Work brings you the conversations that matter most to HR professionals and business leaders like you. Brought to you by AIM Employers Association and Ogletree Deacons, live every Thursday morning. This is your opportunity to connect with their experts and ask your burning questions. So what's keeping you up at night? Let's face it together now on This Week at Work.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Burt, it's been 23 days now since the government shut down.
It's been 23 days. I, for one, is in my daily life, not as a lawyer, haven't noticed a thing. But my life daily as a lawyer, I have noticed quite a bit. The National Labor Relations Board is not doing a thing. The EEOC, the only thing they're doing is sending out notices of charge of discrimination, but they're processing them for timeliness reasons. But otherwise, they're not doing anything. And then I've got some litigation going on in federal court, which the federal courts are still operating for now. More so on an emergency basis, but the case that I have right now against the NLRB, the National Labor Relations Board, is just stalled out, and they keep seeking extensions of time. So in my life as a lawyer, I'm noticing it pretty dramatically.
Yeah, well, that's the impact, I think. I have not noticed it. I want to get an opinion from our fan favorite, Mikey Mac is back to talk about compensation with us. Mike, welcome back to the program. Are you being affected by this government shutdown out in the East Coast at all?
Not at all. The only issue has been the lack of the reports that a lot of people relying on from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. Although, what has happened now that the ADP monthly report that talks about wage increases and employment has now become really the mainstay of data that we're using. So we've moved on. We don't need the BLS. We've got ADP, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if either of you have jumped on an airplane and air traffic control and lines at airports. I personally have avoided that and chose to drive, even though it might be a little bit longer versus flying. Just not knowing what to expect. And
right.
I would assume that eventually becomes a problem for us. But 23 days and counting doesn't look like there's any immediate relief in sight.
Right.
I agree with that, Phil. I think the air traffic controllers, if I'm not mistaken, that they're funded along with a lot of other government employees under a different mechanism. And so their funding still continues, I believe. I'll report back to you. I'm going to be flying tomorrow.
I can tell you, I flew last week. I was in New York, and I had absolutely no problems going in and out for LaGuardia. And then this weekend, I went to a reunion, my graduation reunion, 50 years at Loyola in Chicago, and I had no problems going in and out of Chicago. So I didn't notice anything, and I'm getting my Social Security check. So
that's most important. All right. I'm glad that you're getting that check, most importantly.
Right.
I know we got a lot to talk about with this pay inequity and some of the factors that are causing that. But before we do that, Mike, we want to get into Lawyer on the Clock, our fans' favorite section here with Mr. Burt Garland. So, Burt, are you ready?
I'm ready, Phil.
Nick, go ahead and pull that lever, buddy.
Curious about a case that could wreck your workplace? Lucky for you, we have a lawyer on the clock.
There you
All right. So, Phil, the first one I want to talk about today is there was a case in 2022 called Thrive, and that's a company, Thrive Inc., THRYV. And under Thrive, the board expanded the legal concept of what are called make-whole remedies under the National Labor Relations Act for employees who are victims of an employer's unfair labor practice charges. Previously, prior to Thrive, those remedies were typically limited only to back pay and reinstatement. Under that Thrive decision, the board expanded relief that it ordered employers to pay when they violated the National Labor Relations Act. And those wider range of damages, but beyond the lost back pay and benefits and then reinstatement, included medical costs, credit and debt expense, job search expenses, moving expenses, and potentially tax consequences. And this marked a big change for the NLRB on the relief that they could issue against employers. There were some subsequent legal developments. In May 2024, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals partially vacated the NLRB's order in that Thrive case. However, the court did not outright reject the NLRB's expanded view of those remedies. There has developed a circuit court split. Not surprisingly, the Ninth Circuit ruled that the broader Thrive remedies are within the NLRB's authority. And so now there's a split in the circuits. The Third Circuit, like the Fifth Circuit, ruled that the board have limited power to impose certain types of consequential damages. Well, just in the last couple days here, the NLRB, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, reviewed another one of these Thrive cases, and it was a split panel decision from the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. And the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals held that the NLRB is allowed to make employers pay for financial hits that workers take as a result of an employer's unfair labor practices, because doing so makes the employee whole under the National Labor Relations Act. And so the reason why I'm sharing this with people is that it used to be, prior to Thrive, that the employer's monetary exposure was very, very limited.
Yeah, just relatively back pay. Now there's a lot of other consequential pay associated to that.
That's right. And the reason I'm sharing this with everyone is to put it on people's radar that I think this one's heading to the U.S. Supreme Court for eventual determination, given the split in the circuit. So keep your eyes on that one.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll stay tuned for an update.
I want to shift gears, talk a little bit about a recent decision from a Mississippi federal court that came out yesterday, actually. And in this decision, a federal judge struck down a Biden-era U.S. Department of Health and Human Services rule that protected gender-affirming care under the Affordable Care Act. That court ruled that federal officials at the Department of Health and Human Services exceeded their authority by broadening the definition of sex discrimination to include gender identity. So in that order, the district judge stated that he was bound by the 1970s definition of sex discrimination. And so this ruling is significant. It comes after 14 Tennessee and 14 other states sued the Biden administration in Mississippi federal court last year, accusing the Health and Human Services of attempting to enshrine sweeping gender identity mandates without congressional consent. So again, I think this one may also be heading for eventual determination, and does show sort of a trend going on around the country on these types of issues.
So, Burt, on that one, are they saying that that is not a protected class?
That's exactly right.
We're breaking it down to? Okay.
Yes, that under the laws of the federal government, in particular, the laws that apply to the Affordable Care Act, that gender discrimination or gender identity is not a protected status under those laws. It does not mean, of course, that gender identity is still, well, let me phrase it a different way. Gender identity is still a protected status under Title VII, as the Supreme Court ruled several years ago. But, it remains to be seen whether the Supreme Court might revisit that one at some point as well.
Okay, very good. What else you got for us, Burt?
Yeah, and the last one I want to talk about for everybody is just a reminder, especially for our Illinois listeners. I'm seeing a bit of a resurgence in personnel file requests in many instances where employees request access to their personnel file. In Missouri, employees have no right to access their personnel files. Those belong to the employer, not the employee, and the employees do not have a right to access those. Illinois is very different. They have a personnel file access law in Illinois that gives employees the right to access their personnel file upon reasonable notice, and the employers have to provide a reasonable time and a reasonable place for the employees to inspect their personnel files. In addition, in Illinois, if the employee sees something in their personnel file that they want to comment on, they have a right to include something in the personnel file that addresses whatever it is that's in the personnel file that they take issue with. And so there are a number of states, I think there's 19 states to be exact, that provide current and former employees with access to their personnel files upon request. Many of those states' laws define personnel file to include information and records related to performance, discipline, and termination of employment. And so I really just want to raise this as a reminder to employers that employees in many of the states, Illinois included, have this right. And so you do need to, from time to time, audit the personnel files, or at least audit the requirements within the business of what should and should not be contained in a personnel file. Make sure that it's complete, make sure that it's accurate, make sure that it's in proper form, that if you want to use something in litigation down the road, that it's contained in the personnel file. You don't want to get caught not having the proper documents in the personnel file, because that could possibly later preclude you from using those documents in defense of a case. And so again, I just want to raise it as a reminder to employers, the importance of the personnel file.
So back in my day in human resource management, then the debate was, what is a personnel file, right? My file in my desk drawer of the 15 people who report to me versus the file in HR that has all of the employment records and employment history data in it as well. Any thoughts on that, Burt?
Yeah, the one that I see most frequently, Phil, is oftentimes a manager has a manager's file on an employee or particular employee.
These are my notes, right?
Yeah.
That's what. Yeah, these are for me. These are my notes.
Yeah, and those are the ones you want to be really, really careful about, because sometimes there may be inappropriate things that are in those notes that you don't want to come out in subsequent litigation. Other times there's great information in those documents that you do want to come out in subsequent litigation. And if those documents are not included in that personnel file when the employee reviews it, or when the employee makes a request for that personnel file post-employment, you run the risk that you're going to be precluded from using those documents down the road. And so again, that's why you want to educate your managers, your supervisors, to make sure that they are including all relevant and pertinent information in the personnel file, that it's being maintained in there properly. And so again, it serves as a reminder. Some of these things, it gets so complicated these days with all of the laws that we have to pay attention to and all of the requirements at the federal level and at the state level, that we sort of forget some of these basics. I'm just urging employers to go back and take a review, make sure that you are from time to time taking a look and auditing what you require to be included or what you exclude from personnel files.
Yeah, no, that it's so simple on the surface, right? My personnel file, then you get into the manager's desk file. The manager has a set of files at home because he can't or she can't lock the desk. Then I have my manager's text messages to the employee. I mean, it's not as simple on the surface as we would like for it to be,
Exactly.
particularly with technology today. Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. Anything else, Burt?
I'm just going to make a real quick comment. It looks like employment for the class of 2024 in law reached record levels for that class. The National
That's what we need is
Association,
more lawyers.
More
exactly.
lawyers.
You love them. The National Association for Law Placement issued its survey, and for 2024. They found that 93.4% of law grads were employed within 10 months of graduation. That's one of the highest rates in that study's 50-year history. And so law school, if for those of you who've got children who don't know what to do, or they've just dreamed all their life of being a lawyer, might be a good path these days. I, for one, am hoping it pans out for my son, who's a third year at St. Louis University. So we'll see what happens with him, and I'll report back.
So, well, let's use this as our transition to Mikey Mac and our topic. That's a really good report. But does your update share anything about the percent of men and women enrollment for that? And Mike, we're going to transition to you as Burt takes a look at that.
Sure.
And let's talk about what we're seeing with pay equity or inequity starting to change and some of the reasons why. Anything there, Burt?
There actually is in here, and it talks quite a bit in the study. So I mentioned before that 93.4% of grads in 2024 found employment within 10 months of graduation, and the statistics do break down. Let's see, it doesn't break it down by gender, but it does break it down by other protected classes, Asian, Black, Latin, Native Hawaiian, and Pacific Islander graduates. And that dragged a little bit behind between 89.3 and 92.3% of people in those categories were hired. So hiring's up across the board, but for minorities, it is dragging by a little bit.
All right. Well, that gets us to you, Mikey. What do we have happening with pay inequity here, starting to shift maybe in the wrong direction for us, Mike?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is now with the whole movement of return to work programs and policies of employers who are now requiring people to come back. And because of that, there's been a lot of issues in terms of, especially female population. The statistics are showing that males are more likely to return to work than females under that circumstance. And so what is happening is the female population then either, if they decide not to come back and they quit and they don't work, which means immediately that affects our gender pay equity ratio. The other thing that's happening is we have clients who are now offering return to work incentives, meaning that they're paying you more if you do return to work.
Okay, well, slow down, Mike. All right, let's slow. This is the first time I'm hearing this one. So you're seeing a new trend that we're going to incentivize you to return to the office.
Right.
But I just want to remind our listeners, because this was always a fun debate, but we didn't think it was okay to pay someone who worked from home at that time less. Remember that discussion?
That's right.
So now, if you're back at the office, or if you come back to the office, we're going to incentivize you with pay.
Right. And the argument that I've heard from some clients and employers is that, well, for you to come back to work, you now have transportation costs, you now have, wardrobe costs, you have different costs that you'll be incurring that you didn't have when you were working at home. So in order to balance that, they're now saying we'll give you a differential for coming back to work. And it's interesting because depending on your generation, as a boomer, I'm sitting there going, that's ridiculous. You go back to work, right? You have a job, you show up, they tell you to come in, you go. But we're dealing with a different generation who is saying, well, maybe I really don't need to be there. I can be very productive at home, so why should I come back to work?
Phil, don't you ask yourself that every day? Why should I come back to work? Wait a minute, you love being there. You love being there.
Burt, it's not me that asks it. It's my employees that are like, hey, shouldn't you just work from home at a distance? We don't want to see you every day. We'll come in and run things. Yeah.
All right.
So the impact of that, and again, that you're right. It's almost the same argument we were tracking during COVID when people were their pay was reduced if they worked at home. And there were cases that said, well, wait a minute, no, there's some inadvertent discrimination going on because more women were going home. So therefore their pay went down. Now we're saying, well, we're going to give those who come back to work an additional amount, but it turns out it's more males than females. So I think this is going to have the same conclusion as we start going through. And Burt, I would think in your world, there will probably be, as this develops, some more pay inequity cases.
Yeah, I think you're right. Phil and I touched on it on some prior programs, Mike, that people are really sort of faced these days with the expense of everything out there, with really making a decision as a couple, and I'm talking about married couples, about one spouse legitimately considering no longer working because what they earn doesn't pay for, by the time you tax that income, it doesn't pay for things like daycare and tuition and those types of things, that they're better off sometimes staying at home. And so there is a decision among couples.
And on top of that, the other issue is during COVID, many companies closed down their in-house daycares and they haven't opened them up again. Right. So they lost that opportunity where the female worker who says, well, I've got kids, I've got to deal with that. I can bring my kids to a daycare sponsored by the company or even at the company's facility. We found a lot of our clients, they haven't reopened them.
Yeah. Burt, to that point, I did some real quick searching here, and we talk about the cost of daycare. If we look at families in 1990 spent about 9% of their income on childcare, while today families spend an average of 18.5% to 24% of their income.
Wait. Hold on. Say that again one more time, Phil, because I want to make sure everyone heard that.
Yeah. So in 1990, it was about 9% of your income, family's income was spent on childcare. And today, families spend an average of 18.5% to 24% of their income on childcare. Now, one thing I know, anyone that follows programs, so we're going on grandchild number 5 here in the next 30 days, right? That will be 3 added to the Brandt clan this year alone. And so we're very close to the cost of daycare. And one of my daughter-in-laws chose to stay home versus continue to work part-time because now they have 2 instead of 1, and it's just a lot more affordable. But what I also have learned is daycare isn't the daycare of 1990 today. Daycare is a country club today, and I'm not trying to criticize it, but my goodness, the things that caused that increase, right? I mean, my mother ran a daycare out of our house. At any given time, there were 4 or 5 like little kids running around the house that she was taking care of. Or if you went to KinderCare, that was the big brand in the area. Versus today, the things that you get exposed to in daycare today. I'm not knocking it. I'm just saying, but it's also not apples to apples in, here's a room with some Tonka toys and some dolls and go play with them.
It's you're talking about amenities, Phil. What are some of these amenities you've
Yeah.
seen?
Oh, I mean, the field trips that they take, and it's a spa-like facility, and the food
Yeah.
and the preparation, and the interaction with the parents and the kids while they're at school. It's really, and that all costs money, is my point. So when we drive and aspire to that, then there should be an increase. Now we're getting off topic, and I'm definitely not downplaying it. I think it's important in the way that we live life today.
I think it's germane, though, Phil, because that's going to have the impact on decision making.
It does,
In
yeah.
terms of am I coming back to work or not? And if my employer is saying you must or you will not have your position anymore, that puts everyone in a bind in terms of what they really need to do. And
It
so,
does. When you back me into a corner, then I have to make the decision, and
right.
that's a tough spot for a family to make with those numbers. I'm sure they're pretty accurate numbers. That's a high expense. Mike, what are some of the other factors that might be driving an inequity here? Is there anything else top of mind when you look at that, like the career interruptions when I stop, right? So it kind of delays my career. I can't re-enter
Sure.
the workforce on path or in line with the
Right.
trajectory that I had when I left.
Right. So one of the things that we've been trying to move our clients away from is still relying on tenure-based pay decisions, meaning that how long you've been in that position or in that career will determine the offer that we're going to give you when you come in, because that automatically
Back to what you and I always talk about on this program, and when we do programs for our members, and that's really about having a true compensation strategy and program that guides these decisions. Because one of the issues, I'm just reading here, some of the other factors, is they talk about like the negotiation gap. Right. And if you have the right policies and the right compensation structure, this one won't be an issue. Now, I have not found this to be true, but I'm going to guess there's some truth to it, that studies show that women are less likely to negotiate for higher pay or promotions, often due to social penalties or cultural expectations around assertiveness and so on. And while I have not experienced that with the women I work with, I can tell you that there's definitely maybe some truth to that. But if you have the right compensation strategy, right, it's not about a negotiation process. It's about the science of your compensation philosophy.
Correct. And it's also how that's administered in the controls that you put in place, because there is still going to be some of that gender bias potentially from management making decisions. And so it's really, I think, behooves human resources within that philosophy, strategy, and policy, that how you're governing these decisions as you're going through, which really helps to alleviate some of the issues that may very well be related to gender bias.
Hey, Mike, I want to address something you just pointed out, because this is where I see it when it lands on my desk, and I want to make sure our listeners caught what you said here, that you're trying to focus on competency rather than tenure. And that's a really difficult thing to do sometimes. In the cases that I've seen, that I've worked on personally, there's situations where, let's say you have a male and a female spouse, and the female took several years off to give birth and then raise those kids. The husband and wife made a conscious decision that he was going to go back to work and she was going to stay home and raise that family. And so she did that for 10, maybe 15 years, and then seeks to re-enter the workforce. She then goes back and she's getting paid less than people who stayed at the company that entire time. So she doesn't have the tenure. And so then it becomes, all right, can she still do the job? Has that male employee, for instance, has he gained experience and learned things over that 10 or 15 year period that make him more competent to do the job or not? And I think that's where that nuance really comes in. And I think you're right. You really do need to focus on the competency rather than the tenure in and of itself, and focus on the fact that, look, if the situation were reversed and the male employee took 10 to 15 years off to raise the family, and the female kept working that entire time, there's going to be situations where that female employee is going to be more competent just because she gained 10 or 15 more years of experience. And I think that's where that nuance comes in from a legal perspective.
I agree. I agree.
So one listener, Lauren, here said that a friend of mine was given the option, return to the office with a $2,000 salary increase and lunch provided every day, or work from home. Both she and her husband work for the same company, and they opted to stay home. So, Mike, I think there's an example where we're incentivizing and changing the workforce structure a little bit, and allowing people to, here's additional money, we're going to provide you lunch, maybe other soft benefits around some of that, that all cost money, and people are still electing to work from home.
Right.
So it's going to be interesting to follow this trend. Burt, I think what I'm hearing you say is tenure does matter. And I think, Mike, what I'm hearing you say, and I love the debate, but organizations are moving away from tenure and trying to measure more competency. I'm going to interpret, well, I gained my competency through my tenure is what you're really saying.
That's the nuance. Yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Nuance, right. And it depends on the position. Some positions don't change after 5 years, 10 years. They could be the same skill set that was needed. There are others that will advance, that if you haven't kept up with the technology, then we don't have to pay you at the same level.
I mean, Burt can charge what he can charge because he's been doing this for 30 years and he's seen it all at this point.
Hey guys, on that note, I've got to run because I just got an email from Alexander Zhang. He's a private investigator, and he's been contracted by a financial institution to ascertain my relationship with an individual who died some time ago. He died without a will, and I may be related to the deceased. And so I may be entitled to a huge sum of money. I got to go investigate this, guys.
You may retire.
Hey, don't forget, remember, we're brothers joined at the hip here, Burt. All right, you take care. I think
Phil, I'm going to provide him your banking information instead of my own.
Yeah, I could use the help, Burt. All right, just before we go, you want to stay ahead of your 2026 payroll changes. We know that there's a lot of changes occurring, just some of the things even here that we've talked about, and even as it relates to employee files. So join us on the 39th payroll tax and fringe benefit update, new wage thresholds, tax changes, the OBBBA and Secure Act 2.0, and more. You can attend in person in Peoria, Illinois on December 10th, in person in St. Louis on December 12th, or live online on December 12th. All sessions are from 8 to 12 p.m. We will see you then, and we'll be back here next week, 7:30 Central Time. Take care.
Thank you once again for tuning in to This Week at Work. If you enjoy the show, please like it, share it, and make sure it's on your calendar every week. Ask your burning questions anytime and let us know what topics you'd like us to cover. Just go to hrAsk.org and be sure to leave a review wherever you catch our show to help other HR pros find us as well. We'll see you next week when we discuss what's happening this week at work.